Krishna, everyone. Welcome back again to our ongoing series on the glories of Sri Vrindavan Dham. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nivishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarane. All glories to Prabhupada. So today I decided to continue with Radha and Krishna's winter pastimes. As we've mentioned several times in previous classes, Vrindavan is blessed with 6 seasons. The joy of monsoon, the pleasure of autumn, the satisfaction of winter, the happiness of the dewy season, the beauty of spring, and the auspicious season of summer. Now, Srila Jiva Goswami refers to 4 of these seasons in his Gopal Vira Diwali, text 24. He writes, O Lord, charming as spring, O Lord, pleasant as summer, O Lord, splendid as the monsoon season, O Lord, with the limitless playfulness of autumn, O Lord, with the handsomeness of winter. Quoting Jiva Goswami. Now, our acharyas write that each season has its own unique characteristics of climate, foliage, fruit, harvest, animals, and birds. And these qualities become prominent during specific times. In summer, the titiba birds sing like dundubi drums. In the rainy season, the peacocks, they dance at the first sign of rain. And in the winter, the forests resound with the sweet sounds of partridges. That's really sweet. Now, a number of pastimes, there are a number of pastimes that we're all familiar with that take place in Vrindavan's winter. For example, the chastisement of the Kaliya serpent, wherein, after punishing Kaliya in the Jamuna River, Krishna warmed himself in the sun at Das Aditya Tila, that little knoll, that little hill near the Jamuna River. And Srila Raghunath Das Goswami makes note of this in his famous Brajavilas Shtava, text 82. He writes, once accompanied by the gopis and Surabhi cows, the supremely opulent, noble, and magnanimous Krishna felt very uncomfortable in the winter cold. 12 suns then appeared at that place, and with great devotion warmed the Lord with their intense shining. I eternally take shelter of this sacred place which bears the name Das Aditya Tila. Raghunath Das Goswami. Also, study of Shastra reveals that during the first month of the winter season, the young unmarried girls of Gokula, the gopis, observed the vow of worshipping goddess Katyayani. We spoke on that pastime a lot, but that happens also in the winter. They worship the goddess Katyayani with that famous mantra, Katyayani Mahamaye Mahayogini Adishwari Nanda Gopashutam Devi Pati Me Kurute Namaha. They prayed to her, O goddess Katyayani, great potency of the Lord, O possessor of great mystic power, mighty controller of all, please make the son of Nanda Maharaj my husband. I offer my obeisances unto you. This was their prayer. But further study of the Shastras reveal that, for pastime's sake, those gopis' parents, the parents of those gopis, they actually arranged for those gopis to be married to cowherdmen. Thus, after a short time, those girls were expected to move from the homes of their parents to the homes of their new husbands in order to take up the duties it's described of chaste wives. But the acharyas say that these girls' minds were fixed on Krishna. And to them, The prospect of such a move was worse than walking through a wall of fire. That's how the acharyas write it. The prospect of moving into the homes, their new in-laws, was worse than walking through a wall of fire. Those young gopis were thinking as follows, and I quote here, "Separated from Krishna, my father's home has become like a prison for a king. But if I have to go to my mother-in-law's house, it will be like living in a prison meant for criminals." That's how the girls were thinking. And it's written that their misery showed on their faces, and their parents had no idea what to do. What's more, their new mothers-in-law were angry that they were hesitating, and the villagers were critical. And so the gopis' parents, these girls who refused to leave home, what did they do? They turned to Yogamaya for a solution to this problem. So then Yogamaya, it's really interesting, Yogamaya, she took the young girls to the homes of their new husbands and their new in-laws, but Yogamaya created duplicates of the girls so that they never had to have intimate contact with their husbands. She created duplicates of the gopis, so they never had to have any intimate contact with their husbands. And thus, they remained pure for Krishna. All glories to Yogamaya. Now this new situation, despite the fact that they're, living with their husbands, it allowed them sometimes to have contact with Krishna. For example, while walking here and there in Vrindavan, with the various duties, taking milk products from here and there, sometimes Krishna and the gopis would pass by each other and they would exchange sidelong glances. And one time Krishna had an idea to play his flute in a certain way as to attract the gopis at the right time to where he was standing in the forest. He thought as follows, the acharyas write, "I will play a tune that will bewilder and attract the gopis, especially Sri Radha. I just need to find the notes to which those girls are most susceptible, to which their senses will be attracted." This was Krishna's plan. So what did he do? Krishna began experimenting with different flute melodies. We told a similar pastime last year, but this is more complete. He began experimenting with different flute melodies. One day he played a tune he's experimenting. He played a tune that stunned the cows, who gave up eating grass in favor of relishing the flute song with their ears. And it's described tasting the sweetness of Krishna's face with their eyes. So he's experimenting with different tunes. So this tune worked on the cows. So the next day, Krishna tried another tune. And with this tune, all the forest animals and birds were stunned. And like the cows, they all stood still where they were as if they had been confined, it's described, to invisible cages. So it's experimenting with different melodies. And on the third day, the tune that Krishna played attracted the deer who flocked to him en masse. And it's described, mesmerized by his attractive appearance, they worshipped Krishna with love-filled eyes. Just try to picture that in your mind. They're standing there next to Krishna, and they're worshipping him with love-filled eyes. Now the gopis, ultimately he wanted to attract the gopis. The gopis were aware of these, you could say, practice sessions. And they went to Krishna's mother, actually. And they said, "O pious Mother Yasoda, your son, who is expert in the art of herding cows, has invented various novel styles of flute playing." They were taking notice of Krishna's experiments. So then it's described by our illustrious acharyas that on the fourth day, Krishna played another tune which attracted the demigoddesses, the ladies of heaven, Shvargaloka, who, it's described, were so bewildered by that sound that their clothes loosened and their ornaments fell off. Now, on the fifth day of this experiment, Krishna played a melody. It's described so powerful that all animate things became unconscious and all inanimate things came to life. I like that one. Krishna played a melody so powerful that all animate things that move, became unconscious, and all inanimate things that don't move came to life. So the acharyas say that, but the gopis remain unaffected by that particular melody. But they mentioned that the river Jamuna was deeply moved by that flute playing. Actually, when the Jamuna River heard that flute song, I was reading, she stopped flowing and became completely bewildered. Her waves swelled and her waters trembled. Then completely changing course, she flowed towards Krishna and offered lotus flowers to his feet. So sweet. Brajalila is just sweet, sweet, sweet. Nevertheless, that melody, it somehow didn't attract the gopis. Krishna was not yet successful. So it's written he just kept trying new melodies day after day. The acharyas say that these melodies mesmerized, the word they use, mesmerized, the clouds overhead and Vrindavan's mountains, including Govardhan Hill. The few melodies we tried afterwards. They mesmerized the clouds and Vrindavan's mountains, such as Govardhan Hill. So the description goes on and on. But Krishna finally found the proper tune. And just in time. Because feeling separation from Krishna, the gopis had become frantic. To the point that their in-laws, their new families, their in-laws thought that their sons had married mad women. That's how frantic the girls became in separation from Krishna. So their in-laws were thinking, our sons have married mad women. But the most disturbed, and we can understand, the most disturbed of all the gopis was Sri Radha, who at one point was actually thinking that she would like to become a bamboo flute. She wanted to become a bamboo flute. And we can understand that desire of hers in her thoughts. The acharyas have given us her thoughts. We're so blessed. She was thinking as follows. The flute is fortunate because as a male, it does not have to be shy like us gopis. Thus it rests in Krishna's hands and transforms the nectar of Krishna's lips into beautiful music that causes the rivers to swell and the bamboo along the riverbanks to shed tears in the form of honey. I pray, Bhadarani says, thinking, I pray for the body of a bamboo flute. I reject this body of a supposedly respectable woman. No other type of body can relish what the flute does as Krishna plays it with eagerness and affection. Radharani's thoughts. She goes on to think, the day I become a flute, my consciousness will certainly ebb. No doubt I will forget my identity. But Krishna will remember me as the gopi who became a piece of wood from suffering and separation from him. So deep. But Krishna will remember me as the gopi who became a piece of wood from suffering and separation from him. Hare Krishna. Of course, we know eventually Sri Radha and the gopis' intense desire to be with Krishna was fulfilled, as we discussed recently in our series on the rasa dance. For when Krishna later played his flute at Vamsivat, you remember, all the young girls came running. And eventually, they danced with the Lord for an entire night of Brahma. Hare Krishna. So, if we study that pastime carefully, you know how Krishna was dancing with the gopis, and then he left the rasa dance, etc., and then he reunited with them. We can understand that sometimes Krishna distances himself from his devotees, simply to increase their attachment to him. I was reading Navadvipam Mahatmya the other day, and in chapter 14 I found a very beautiful verse related to separation. You know, it's interesting because as I've said many times, you know, at our particular point in Krishna consciousness, we're just trying to connect with Krishna, to reconnect with Krishna, actually. That's our whole focus. We're chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Please give me some seva. I want to connect with you. So how does this separation fit in? Well, Navadvipam Mahatmya, chapter 14, there's a beautiful verse. Actually, Lord Ramachandra is speaking to Sita Devi. So listen to what he says. My dear wife, there are two ways my devotees feel love for me: in union with me and in separation from me. Although my eternal associate, like you and my mother, desire union, I mercifully give you separation, because the distress of separation from me is actually the topmost bliss, and the union that follows yields a happiness 1,000,000 times greater than ever before. The science of Vipralambha Bhav, spoken by Lord Ramachandra. Hare Krishna. Now, a famous and very much loved Vaishnav poet, his name is Nagaridas. He shares with us a very beautiful separation pastime in his famous work called Sharad Man Leela. Make a nice name for someone. He wrote a book called Sharad Man Leela, which is famous here in Braj. And I'll share that pastime with you. He writes that once, during the winter season, because this is part 2, the winter season, he writes once, during the winter season, Sri Radha was feeling separation from Krishna. So she sent Lalita Saki to tell Krishna about her condition. So Lalita Saki went to Nandagaon, where Krishna was sitting in a room called Tivari. So much detail. Krishna was sitting in a room called Tivari, and Tivari means literally the warm room. Bear in mind, it's winter. He was sitting in the warm room, where it's also described there were dark-colored curtains that were hanging everywhere, and the smell of aguru smoke prevailed everywhere. We say oud. Sometimes aguru is called oud, perfume, oil, which we use in puja. So Krishna was sitting in this warm room. He was dressed in cotton-filled silk garments. They're called fargul, F-A-R-G-U-L, fargul. And he was sitting in front of a burning coal pan called Angiti. Angiti. So Lalita said to him, Krishna, despite the cold winter weather, Shri Radha is burning in separation from you. Her lotus-like face has now faded by this separation. So Krishna was concerned. So the poet writes that Krishna got up very quickly and he left with Lalita to where Shri Radha was waiting. And our poet Nagari, he describes that the divine couple, they met like the sun meets the fog in winter, like fire meets cotton, or like warmth meets cold. He's a poet. Their meeting was like the sun meeting with the fog in winter, like fire meets cotton, or like warmth meets cold. Poetry is meant to bring forth some emotions. In our case, spiritual emotions. So they've met, and after some time, the divine couple decided to take a walk outside, to the winter forest. So to keep them warm in this cold winter weather, two Sakis, I was reading, walked before them with burning coal in an iron pan. This was the old days. Now we have different ways, but just imagine the divine couples walking through the beautiful winter forest with two Sakis carrying burning coal in an iron pan. And so that their feet would not feel any cold, two other Sakis walked before them, throwing white and black sesame seeds on the ground, with the idea that by stepping on those white and black sesame seeds, there's a cushion so they didn't have to feel the cold on the ground. Wow, nectar! So after a while, they're walking, and then Krishna, wanting to glorify Shri Radha, he expressed himself, but the acharyas say, perhaps not with the best choice of words. He wanted to glorify Radha, but perhaps he didn't use the best choice of words, and it's a pastime, it's a lila. So he said, my dear Radhe, the opulence of Vrindavan is simply the shadow of the beauty of your opulence. And listen carefully. The opulence of Vrindavan is simply the shadow of the beauty of your opulence. So at that point, Shri Radha's eyebrows, they curled in anger, man. And she said to Krishna, Krishna, what are you saying? Shadows are never bright. They're always dark. And because you are the color of a dark monsoon cloud, Vrindavan is actually your shadow. So, after Krishna argued the point for a while, Shri Radha went into deep man, anger, comparing her to a shadow, or her opulence to a shadow. She became angry. And at that point, Lalita Saki, in order to bring Radha out of her man, her anger, she said something very interesting. She said, Dear Srimati Radharani, as a shadow is controlled by the body, as moonlight is controlled by the moon, as a chakra bird is controlled by the sun, as the bee is controlled by the lotus, as the chakori bird is controlled by the rain, as the body is controlled by the soul, similarly, the master of all the gopis is under your control. Please be merciful to him and forgive him. But Radha replied, Lalita, some offenses are difficult to forgive. Just let Krishna do some austerities now. So at this point, Krishna turned and he said to Radha, Dearest Radha, please put your man, your anger aside. Otherwise, the brother of man, viraha, or separation, will come and separate us again like he separated us before. So these words, Krishna's words, melted Shri Radha's heart. She gave up her man. And they both embraced each other. And then the poet says, then the demigods started playing drums. And the gopis, they started offering winter sweets made of 8 types of fruit seeds to Radha and Krishna. Winter sweets. I'd like to find that recipe to offer my deities. Because it's winter now here in Vrindavan. I'm wearing a warm chadar. Winter sweets made of 8 types of fruit seeds. That's what they offered to Radha and Krishna. And because everything was resolved at that point, Radha and Krishna continued their playful pastimes in Vrindavan. And the poet concludes, quote, may the winter season always bind the divine couple in the ropes of love and engage my mind in always singing their glories. Hare Krishna. Those nice winter pastimes. We often think of winter as an austerity, but in Vrindavan it's just a source of joy for the divine couple and all of the devotees in Vrindavan. And all glories to winter pastimes in Sri Vrindavan Dham. So let us finish with some beautiful words from our beloved Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, from his Krishna Bhavanamrita, wherein we hear Vrinda Devi addressing these 6 seasons of Vrindavan personified. She's addressing them. She says, O seasonal goddesses, adorn the forest for Radha and Krishna's pleasure. O goddess of springtime, go to Govardhan Hill and stay at the Rashasthali. O goddess of autumn, stay on the bank of the Jamuna in the land of desire trees. In the land of desire trees. O all of you seasonal goddesses, surrender everything to the service of Radha Kund and its forests, to give fun and astonishment to your masters, Shishi, Radha and Krishna. Be blessed, O limitlessly fortunate goddesses. The rainy season should stay east of the Kund. The autumn to the south. The Hemanta, the season between autumn and winter, stay in the west. O winter, stay in the north. Spring should stay in the trees around the Radha Kund. And summer, inside the water, to make jalkeli, or water pastimes, successful. So then he writes, hearing these words, the 6 seasons that are experienced like no one else, offered their obeisances to Vrinda Devi and the Sakis, and went to do their services as was proper. For who will not endeavor to become blessed like this? The end. Hare Krishna. Wow. So winter pastimes. So when many of you are in the northern hemisphere, so it's winter, and our philosophy culminates in always remembering Krishna and never forgetting him. So even in the cold winter, you can remember some of these pastimes and be warm inside. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Prabhus. We'll go back to our studies, and we'll come back and discuss another of the 6 seasons. Or remember, we have 9 seasons. We have 10 seasons actually in Vrindavan. We'll be back soon in a couple of days. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Shri Shri Gaur Nitai ki, Shri Shri Krishna Balaram ki, Shri Shri Radha Shama Sundar ki, Vrindavaneshwari Shrimati Radharani ki, the winter pastimes in Vrindavan ki, Shri Shri Gaur Nitai ki, Shri Mayapur Dhama ki, Shri Krishna Sankirtan Yagya ki, Go Premanandi, Jai Jai Sisi Radhe.